And we have breaking news coming in of the US bomber that has landed in Britain as the United Kingdom allows the use of military bases. We're talking about the B-1 Lancer that has arrived in the United Kingdom on Friday evening after the British Prime Minister granted permission for defensive US action against Iranian missile sites from UK bases. We have Shiv Arun, my colleague, joining us in order to get us the latest. Shiv, a US bomber capable of carrying 25 cruise missiles has landed in the UK. This after Starmer had initially refused to grant permission. Take us through the significance and the capabilities of the boat.
Very, very significant given, Divya, that the B-1B Lancer is one of the three frontline bombers used by the United States for, long-range missions, very much of the kind that Iran actually presents. Now, with the B-1B Lancer, entering this fight, and they have been conducting operations over the last few days. This is the latest B-1B to actually enter the fight, and significant, as you pointed out, that it's operating from, a Royal Air Force base in the United Kingdom, is that the B-1B is the only supersonic bomber in the US fleet. These are swing-wing bombers. They are very much like large fighter aircraft, extremely capable. Like you said, they're able to deploy a huge number of weapons, about 75,000 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, of a mix of weapons, cruise missiles, precision-guided missiles, standoff weapons, etc. And I think the way to interpret this aircraft landing in the UK, operating from there, is A, that Trump's promise that the air battle is being stepped up and more attacks and more airstrikes are going to happen is very, very real. B, the important point now is we've already had the B-2s operating at night over Iran, the B-52s, which are the big, bulky bombers of the United States Air Force, they've been operating. And now the B-1B, which has entered the fight, a few days ago, but also now from the UK, means that all three frontline expeditionary long-range bombers, which are really the symbols of American, military power at range, are all in this one fight. And I think there are many ways to look at how Trump says that this fight is going to continue on and on. But the fact that you've got the B-1Bs, the B-52s, the B-2s, many more fighter aircraft also entering the fray, the United Kingdom, having its bases be staging areas for these bombers to conduct their missions means that I think perhaps it is potentially possible that the most destructive or the most violent phase of Operation Fury is actually ahead of us. Remember, Iran has put out an important statement today saying that they will not attack any of the Gulf states unless they are provoked first. But clearly from the United States side, there are going to be no debates as to, who's going to be firing first. They're obviously bringing their biggest might into the fight over and over again on a daily basis now.
Right. Speaking about the capabilities of the bone, carrying this large bomb load, and it can go a really long distance and a long way. Take us through the details.
Yeah, the B-1B, and it's called Bone because it's like B1, so B-O-N-E, and that's why it's called the Bone. It's nicknamed. It's a beloved aircraft of the United States military. It's a bit of an oddball because it's the only bomber, like I said, in the US inventory that is actually supersonic. Very unusual for a large, heavy bomber of its kind to actually be supersonic. The other thing is, if you notice in the pictures, it's a variable geometry aircraft, which means its wings can swivel back in order for it to go faster and achieve those supersonic speeds. So for those long ranges, this aircraft can achieve incredible eye-watering speeds to actually get to the fight as quickly as possible. So it's got incredible speed. It's got an absolutely enormous capacity to deploy, like you said, cruise missiles, precision-guided weapons, bombs of all kinds, which gives it, makes it pack a very, very heavy punch very, very quickly. It's also much more maneuverable, than the other bombers that I just mentioned, the B-2 and the B-52. And that's the reason why the B-1B Lancer, or the Bone, as you rightly called it, is a very well-regarded aircraft. And I'm not surprised at all to see it actually come into the fight. Remember that bombers need to be escorted by fighters. They usually cannot operate alone, but there are more than enough fighters, in and around the area already operating in over an Iran that has already been dominated from the air. Even though Iran is, has preserved some measure of an air defense, they're still able to give a bit of a fight in some areas. But these bombers will be practically unchallenged when they're escorted by F-22s and F-35 fighters from the Israeli and the US Air Force.